I'll be happy to answer. We will belabor the point further. I've already explained this, that by presenting this amendment, it changes the purpose of the bill and makes it about January 6th. On its face, by your explanations, by all the comments that have been made, you want this to be about January 6th. You just said it again. You emphasize the same point. That's not what the underlying legislation is about.
You're claiming my time.
You asked me to respond, and I'm giving you the response. Okay, so
responded.
on its face, the amendment violates House Rule 16, Clause 7. Now, you can disagree with me, but you're not the chairman anymore. I'm sitting in the chair now.
Reclaiming my time. I certainly do disagree with you. And again, I repeat that the motives of the Republicans today are...
Wow. Somebody had to say it. You just watched Jerry Nadler, the former chairman, barge into the proceedings, lecture the current chair, accuse him of being scared, and throw a full-blown tantrum because he doesn't hold the gavel anymore. And what does Mike Johnson do? He just sits there. Calm, patient, completely unshaken. Then he very clearly and very correctly reminds Nadler how the rules actually work. This isn't personal. This is reality. And this moment makes it crystal clear who's there to follow the rules and who's just trying to perform for the cameras. We're about to watch the full exchange, and I want you to pay attention to who's maintaining order and who's trying to stir chaos. If you're tired of political theater and want the honest breakdowns the mainstream refuses to touch, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to Right Focus. It genuinely helps this channel keep cutting through the noise. All right, let's get into it.
Mr. Chairman, there are 13 ayes and 9 noes.
The motion to table.
Mr. Chairman.
It passes. Yes, who seeks recognition?
I seek to strike the last, move to strike the last word.
The ranking member is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, in this last amendment by Ms. Scanlon that was just ruled out of order, you ruled it out of order because it references a specific date. In my parliamentary universe, adding a specific date is considered a limiting amendment. It limits the scope of the underlying amendment. It does not expand it. Therefore, it cannot be a grounds for holding an amendment out of order because it limits it, it doesn't expand it. It's called in parliamentary terms a limiting amendment, which is always permitted. So this is just another example of the Republicans using obviously specious reasoning because you're afraid to vote on anything to do with January 6th. You're afraid to vote on all the things we've talked about before because your constituents might hold you responsible. So I would ask you why this is not a limiting amendment, why this, in what way this expands the scope of the amendment, and I'll yield to you for the purpose.
I'll be happy to answer. We will belabor the point further. I've already explained this, that by presenting this amendment, it changes the purpose of the bill and makes it about January 6th. On its face, by your explanations, by all the comments that have been made, you want this to be about January 6th. You just said it again. You emphasize the same point. That's not what the underlying legislation is about.
Reclaiming my time.
You asked me to respond, and I'm giving you the response. Okay, so
responded.
on its face, the amendment violates House Rule 16, Clause 7. Now, you can disagree with me, but you're not the chairman anymore. I'm sitting in the chair now.
Reclaiming my time. I certainly do disagree with you. And again, I repeat that the motives of the Republicans today are shameful as seeking only to avoid voting on all these different subjects that have been raised today. I yield back.
Would the gentleman yield?
Would the gentleman yield? The gentleman has yielded back. Does anyone else seek recognition? Ms. Cicilline, and then I'll get to you, Ms. Johnson.
I have an amendment, so I think Mr. Johnson wants to speak with respect to this, so I'm happy to defer to him.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. The blatant hypocrisy on display throughout this hearing is mind-numbing, Mr. Chairman. It's very disappointing that the intellectual dishonesty that is on display is shockingly abusive to the process. I mean, you can't tell the American people who are looking at this that to include federal law enforcement officers in a resolution honoring the service of local and state law enforcement officers is irrelevant or non-germane or out of order in some way. The American people understand that law enforcement is law enforcement. They understand that January 6th, Capitol Hill police officers died. They understand that federal law enforcement officers over the years have died. Actually 650 have died from gunfire over the years. 650 have died from gunfire, federal law enforcement officers. Not to mention the 7 fallen officers of the U.S. Capitol Police Department, 2 of whom have passed away within the last 2 years due to the insurrection. And so we've had law enforcement officers, federal law enforcement officers, who've given their lives to protect us. They were the ultimate displays of courage. But yet this committee doesn't have the courage to vote up or down a germane amendment that simply seeks to add federal law enforcement officers to this resolution. It's simple. The American people understand it. They're not getting thrown off track by talking about crime. And by the way, the crime that you speak of is caused by your policies in opening the floodgates for more guns on the street. This is a failed experiment. More guns does not mean more safe. More guns means less safe. But yet, the response of the Republicans is always more guns. We should be, instead of a resolution to honor police today, just state and local, we should actually be using our time to make our police officers and to make the citizens of this country more safe by limiting guns, by reversing the trend that you all have started and that you continue to adhere to that makes us less safe. It's ridiculous that we would honor police officers at a time when we're making them less safe and refusing to do anything about it other than to offer prayers and to talk about how brave they are when they respond to the next mass casualty event, which could be taking place right as we speak and could be confronted by federal law enforcement officers coming to the aid of state and local officers. Every mass shooting that we have seen has involved a response by the FBI and the ATF, but yet you want to defund those 2 agencies. So we've been doing a lot of talking today. The American people see through it. If we're going to honor police, let's honor our state, local, and federal police. Moreover, let's get past these messaging bills and let's start doing what the American people want us to do, and that is pass some gun reform legislation to keep our communities safe. Democrats have been making our communities safer, voting on legislation to make our communities safer, while Republicans have been stopping the legislation either in the House or in the Senate. It's time for it to end. It's time for the killing to stop. It's time for the philosophy of more guns means more safety to go by the wayside. Less guns will make us more safe. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair is going to respond to the outrageous claim that there's hypocrisy going on here. All the clutching of pearls is so far out of order, and I'm going to clarify the record here for anyone who's watching at home, high school students who are studying civics, and some on this committee who should understand the rules. The rule is, again, let me state very simply what the rule is. House Rule 16, Clause 7 says that an amendment cannot introduce material beyond the scope and purpose of the bill before us. Let me tell you why the last amendment, by way of example, was ruled out of order. I've already explained this again, but I'll give you further detail. Ms. Scanlon's amendment says on page 2, strike all that follows in the underlying bill after the resolving clause and insert the following, that Congress acknowledges the United States Capitol attack on January 6, 2021. The underlying bill says something very different. It says, be it resolved that Congress recognizes and appreciates the dedication and devotion demonstrated by the men and women of local law enforcement who keep our communities safe, and 2, condemns calls to defund, disband, and dismantle or abolish the police. The reason, everybody watching at home, the reason that they're so anxious to change the language of the underlying legislation is because of the last sentence that I just read you, that last clause, because this resolution condemns calls to defund, disband, dismantle, or abolish the police. They're all on record, including the ranking member who just clutched his pearls and told me that I was out of order here.
Would the gentleman
he is
yield?
on record saying that he wanted to defund the police. I'm not going to yield. You guys have talked enough. And you've all accused us of abusing the rules. This amendment, just like the ones before it, is a blatant violation of House Rule 16, Clause 7. It is not germane because it wants to talk about January 6th and it wants to get rid of the condemnation of the call to defund police, which was their mantra here until just recently.
Would the gentleman
Because now we've seen the results.
Mr. Chairman, will you yield
The
to a
chair does
question?
not yield. I will yield if you have an amendment. No, I'm not going to yield to a question. No. You've talked enough, Mr. Cicilline.
You don't get to decide that, Mr. Chairman. You don't get to decide who talked
It's my
enough.
time and I'm not yielding.
Okay, then I ask recognition.
I'll yield back. The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. So I haven't talked enough, apparently. First of all, Mr. Chairman, this notion that the claim you just made that because you've concluded the amendment changes the purpose of the bill as a basis for ruling it not germane is just wrong. There's no such test. It's not whether or not you think it changes the purpose of the bill. God knows how we would determine what the purpose of the bill is. We thought the purpose of the bill was, in fact, to praise police, to praise local police. But now you secretly let out what the real purpose of it is. It's to claim that Democrats want to defund the police. That's not the purpose of the bill. This is for Police Week, to praise local law enforcement.
And support them.
It's my time. Don't try it. The jig is up. You've been exposed. We have, ladies and gentlemen, on the Democratic side, sorry, we've been laboring under the assumption that this was about praising local law enforcement.
It's
Because
both.
that's not what it's about. So I'm going to give you one more chance, Mr. Chairman, yet again to redeem yourself in these
All right.
rulings and offer an amendment.
Oh, the gentleman has an
Oh, no, I'm happy to yield to him.
Just briefly, I mean, the chairman's comments that we were, scared of that language. I mean, the amendment I offered maintained all of that language. In fact, you guys blocked or voted down, I think, 4 amendments that maintained the same language. So that's clearly wrong.
Well, but your amendment did other things that were beyond the scope as well.
No.
And look, asked and answered.
I'm not raising that again. That's clearly not correct. But, I just wanted to point out that the statement you made about we're scared of no, it was in the language that you blocked us from offering to vote on.
Thank you, Mr. Ivey. Excellent point.
Okay,
I reclaim my time.
Well, you gotta
I
go
now
back
have an
and then-
amendment, Mr. Chairman, which is at the desk.
Procedurally, though, yield back and then I'll recognize you for the amendment purpose.
Okay, I yield back.
All right. And the gentleman has an amendment at the desk? The clerk will report.
Is your amendment ready?
Amendment to H. Con. Res. 40, offered by Mr. Cicilline of Rhode Island.
Without objection, the amendment be considered as read. And the gentleman,
Point of order.
point of order is reserved by Mr. Bach, and the gentleman is recognized to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this should finally withstand this effort to have all Democratic amendments declared not germane because you've already accepted the language in the Swalwell amendment. This simply adds language that says, whereas gun violence continues to be the leading cause of line of duty deaths, 64 law enforcement officers were shot and killed while serving their communities. Gun violence continues to pose a serious threat to law enforcement, children, families in our communities. And whereas the law enforcement deaths by gun violence reflect a 21% increase over historical average of firearms-related deaths between 2010 and 2020. And just to avoid any concern, we omit reference to state police agencies and just refer to local police agencies. And in the final paragraph, again, say local police officers. So I think we finally fit through the eye of the needle. It's all about local law enforcement, language you've already accepted with respect to the Swalwell Amendment. So I look forward to not only a ruling that it's germane, but also your support. And I yield back.
Mr.
Gentleman
Chairman, I
yields
insist on
back.
my point of order.
Gentleman, insist on his point of order. You're recognized.
The underlying resolution, the underlying bill is to praise police and to condemn the effort to defund the police. It is not about January 6th. It is not
This is not about January 6th.
It is not about strategies to address gun violence. It is about praising the police, plain and simple. I will read, if I can find underneath all these amendments.
You want the underlying legislation?
Yeah, thank you. I will read the resolved two paragraphs again. Congress recognizes and appreciates the dedication and devotion demonstrated by the men and women of local law enforcement who keep our communities safe, and condemns calls to defund, disband, dismantle, or abolish the police. That is the purpose of this, and the offered amendment is not germane.
Mr. Chairman?
Does the sponsor of the amendment wish to be heard on the point of order?
Yes, I don't know how, this will be an interesting thing to watch, Mr. Chairman, because you've already ruled that the amendment offered by Congressman Swalwell was germane, and that this amendment that I offered today, again, speaks about protecting police officers, and I will just read it. Whereas police officers face increasing danger as guns proliferate across our nation, whereas the police organizations, including the Fraternal Order of Police, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and major city chiefs have supported legislation to curb gun violence by expanding background checks and enacting extreme risk protections while opposing bills that would require states to recognize all concealed carry permits from other states. Whereas despite the objections and safety concerns expressed by local police agencies, organizations, and officers, right-wing state legislatures have eliminated permit and training requirements to carry handguns in public. And whereas high-powered firearms with armor-piercing bullets pose a continued risk to police officers, you have already ruled that language that really just strengthens the underlying purpose of the resolution is in order. So I don't know how you can now determine, other than you like Eric Swalwell and you don't like me, which I hope is not the case, but I'll yield to Mr. Nadler.
Certainly not.
Thank you. I agree with everything that Mr. Cicilline said. I just want to tell you the hypocrisy here. We've been in contact with a former parliamentarian of the House who's been watching these proceedings on TV, and he says every single amendment was in order because striking a clause in the preamble is per se germane, neither adds nor subtracts, and police, by definition, means all police, and that includes the January 6th police, and it includes anything else. So I just want to tell you that's just another confirmation of your hypocrisy. I yield back to Mr.
And I yield as much time as she may consume to the gentlewoman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Cicilline. Just want to remind the committee that last time we took up bills for National Police Appreciation Week, we took up the actual bills that the police asked us to take up, and we did pass them through the House. And this amendment involves the actual bills that the police would like us to take up, including all of my local law enforcement. And I just want to thank Mr. Cicilline for the second year in a row for listening to local law enforcement and bringing before this committee the things that local police actually care about. And I yield back to Mr. Cicilline.
Thank you. And I would just say, Mr. Chairman, to conclude that this amendment is not germane, you would have to conclude that recognizing the dangers that local law enforcement face from gun violence is wholly unrelated to any resolution which recognizes their heroism and thanks them for their service to our communities. That just is impossible to reconcile unless you make a complete mockery of the dangers that the men and women who serve in local law enforcement face every day. The two are completely connected. And so this one I want to watch as you rule.
Does that mean the gentleman yields back?
And I would just say finally that you specifically talk about putting local law enforcement in particular danger in the very language of the underlying resolution. So how is it possible when my amendment simply amplifies another danger that law enforcement faces every single day, that somehow it is wholly unrelated so as to be a different subject matter not properly considered during this markup? And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does anyone else seek recognition on the point of order? Chair is prepared to rule. Mr. Cicilline, you paying attention? You wanted to hear this. You wanted to see it. Okay. The amendment does not satisfy the subject matter and fundamental purpose test. Before you balk, wait, let me explain. Because you cut out the second resolution clause, the important sentence about defunding police that the sponsor of the legislation just said was central to his. This is not a whereas clause, it's the resolution. You're changing the scope of the legislation by striking that out.
Mr. Chairman, you can always limit the scope of a bill by an amendment. You can always limit it. That doesn't go to its.
It changes the purpose of the gentleman's bill.
There's no such thing that says you can't change the purpose.
That's a
There's
matter
no
of
such
opinion
thing.
and should be voted on.
You don't get to decide what the purpose of the underlying resolution is and whether it's changed.
sir.
Mr. Chairman, since when do we have argument while the chair is making a ruling?
The chair started being so absurd.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Wait a minute, Mr. Ranking Member. I sat under lots of absurd decisions from you. All right. Let me read you Section 7 under House Rule 16. It's Clause 7, fundamental purpose. Another test used by the chair in determining germaneness is one in which the fundamental purpose of the bill is compared with the fundamental purpose of the amendment. See Manual Section 933. If the purpose or objective of an amendment is unrelated to that of the bill in which it is offered, the amendment may be. Let me finish. That's 8 Canon Section 2911. The test is particularly applicable to an amendment in the nature of substitute. Okay. If the purpose. Well, it gives lots of examples. All right, let me say this. The parliamentarian who's watching on television, who is, I'm sure, a Democrat parliamentarian or would not have had Mr. Nadler's cell number, let me tell you that this does, in the view of this chair and this parliamentarian, expand or change the purpose of the bill before us. And so our interpretation of House Rule 16, Clause 7, is that it is not germane. Now, the other side is going to disagree, but that's the beauty of our system. The majority party is in the chair, makes decisions, it's appealable, it's subject to table. We've gone through that process here. This is the way this works, and always has. And there are thousands of examples of this and precedent that has been set in the Judiciary Committee in its storied history. So,
Mr. Chairman,
you're not recognized. So for all of the drama here, that is the ruling of the chair, and I yield back.
I appeal the ruling of the chair.
The ruling is appealed. Does the gentleman seek to table? Motion to table. The appeal is made, and the clerk will call the roll.
Now that you've seen the full lead up, let's break down what really happened here, because the context tells the whole story. Jerry Nadler gets recognized to speak, and instead of making a straightforward procedural argument, he immediately goes on the offensive. He accuses the chair of using specious reasoning, basically calling the ruling fake, and then claims Republicans are terrified to vote on anything involving January 6th. We all know that's nothing more than a tired political talking point. But in a formal committee hearing? That's not procedure. That's a blatant personal attack on the chair's motives. And Nadler, of all people, a former chairman of this very committee, knows exactly what he's doing. This was an attempt to provoke, not debate. Meanwhile, Mike Johnson sits there with a level of patience most people wouldn't have. He listens. He lets Nadler rant. And when he finally responds, it's calm, precise, and rooted in the rules. He explains why the amendment was out of order. The key word, germane, meaning it has to be on topic. The original bill honored local law enforcement and condemned the defund the police movement. Nadler's amendment tried to hijack the bill and make it about January 6th. It changed the entire purpose. Johnson followed House rules exactly as written. He was right to rule it out of order. But Nadler keeps pushing, keeps interrupting, keeps trying to relitigate the decision after the explanation was already given. And that's when Johnson finally draws the line. He tells him, "You can disagree with me, but you're not the chairman anymore. I'm sitting in the chair now." Perfect. Firm. Factual. Exactly what needed to be said to restore order. That wasn't arrogance, that was leadership. Johnson reminded everyone that the rules matter, the process matters, and no amount of political theater overrides the structure of the House. This moment shows the divide as clearly as anything. One side wants to legislate, the other wants to create sound bites for the cameras. Johnson was the adult in the room. Steady, patient, and absolutely correct on the rules. That's my take. And if you want more breakdowns like this, the real moments, the ones the mainstream media hides because they expose exactly who's working for the country and who's working for the cameras, make sure you're subscribed to Right Focus. Hit like, share this video, and stay tuned. There's a lot more truth to uncover.